Tonight, here, we don't just talk, we push the talkers to walk the talk.
Moomen, maybe GBC deserves the TV license.
Mr. President, I thought this is your main issue why you came here.
This is my big bro.
From Mondays to Thursdays on GBC News Channel at 8:15 p.m. One of the best moments in my life is when I sit on this chair, and when you sit wherever you are, whether it's in your homes, in your offices, and even for those who are moving out and accessing the program on social media, we're so excited all the time as we sit here to engage people on your behalf in conversations that matter to us. This is GBC News, this is Moomen Tonight, and we are live on Facebook as well as on YouTube, on again on the website of the Ghana Broadcasting Corporation, www.gbcghanaonline.com. It's a widely circulated, publicized program tonight as we focus our attention on the mental health sector in Ghana. And we here at GBC News, we're asking a very simple question on your behalf. What is wrong with the mental health system in Ghana? I have the very right people here who will help me to answer this question. But before I introduce them, let me just give you a little background to the conversation. I'm sure that you are aware that stigma, inadequate infrastructure, medication, funding continues to be a challenge for mental health care in this country. So, per statistics, 1 out of every 5 persons in Ghana has a mental disorder. With our current population of 3.8 million, over 38 million, over 41% of Ghanaians have, what did I say, 30.8 million, I beg your pardon. Over 41% of Ghanaians have psychological distress. That's 16,000 people with severe cases are on the streets. Treatment gap for mental health is still 98%. That's only 2% of persons with mental health receive the needed care. 2% is woefully inadequate in my estimation. For well over 5 years after the mental health law, which is Act 2012, was passed to provide funding for mental health, this has not been done. Mental health disorders are the leading cause of years lived with disorders in Ghana. Ghana spends, and listen, 1.4% of total government health expenditure on mental health. With this, the burden of mental health continues to grow, with serious challenges for the country's health and socio-economic development. And so it's a very serious matter, given the fact that we are told that every 5 persons in Ghana, 1 out of every 5 persons in Ghana has a mental health disorder. That's a huge figure if you put all of us together. It means that we must focus on this issue. I've been joined in the studio by 2 very knowledgeable men who will help us to understand the issues and the way forward. To my immediate left, Mr. Peter Bedimak Yaro. He's the convener, Alliance for Mental Health Development. Thank you very much. This is about the 3rd time we're engaging you in a conversation on this platform, and I'm happy that you have accepted our invitation one more time. Dr. Sinya Azusong, the last time we spoke, I helping me to pronounce this.
Yeah, yes, exactly.
Yes, did I get it?
Yes, you got it very right this time around.
He's a psychiatry resident, Accra Psychiatric Hospital. We are grateful that you have also joined us for this discussion. Even before we get into the meat, I'd like you, Doc, to identify for us who you really are, the role you play. Because for those of us who are not within the sector, psychiatry resident, it's quite misleading. Like, okay, you reside in a psychiatry and therefore you have a disorder.
Yeah, that's a very, very important question, and a lot of people ask when they see that. So, what a psychiatry resident is what I do is that I'm a medical officer by profession, and then I am training to become a psychiatrist. So it's like a senior high school student in SS will be a student, right? So a resident in the medical parlance is someone who is training to become a specialist. That is what a resident is. And so my training facility is Accra Psychiatry Hospital, and that is who I am. That is what a resident means.
I needed us to get that out of the way. You see, again, even before we get into the meat of the substance here, one of the issues that, from where I sit as a journalist, I've come to realize is that people do not report cases that have to do with mental health because of the stigma attached. First of all, the affected person himself fears to be called a mad person. And I'm using the words that Ghanaians would use. The family fear that they would be referred to as the brother, the sister, or the mother or father of the mad boy or the mad girl. Am I right?
Yes, you are. You are perfectly right. And stigma is one of the biggest challenges and issues that we've been fighting from where we stand as mental health advocates and practitioners, because it's a very big deal, and nobody wants to be associated with the mentally ill. Nobody wants to, because a lot of people have certain perceptions about mental illness, that they feel that if Moomen's brother has a mental illness, then I should not associate myself with Moomen's brother.
I understand. We'll get to that. I intentionally used the word mad, hoping that we'll address the terminology. Not too long ago. And these are the issues that we have been discussing here. We try to stay away from the politics and look at the substance of the issues. And so what we have been doing in the past weeks, looking at certain words. We engaged persons with hearing disabilities, deaf persons, and they were not happy with the fact that you call them deaf and dumb. They are not dumb people. And they are visually impaired, but they are not blind people, and so on and so forth. Must we watch the words we use in reference to persons with mental disorders?
Yes, so that is very important. So in the past, in fact, the words that were used were asylum dwellers. So, you know, and the hospitals, in fact, they were not really called hospitals. They were called an asylum, because that is where you go and then keep them. And then later on, they started calling them mad people and all of those. But mad is derogatory, and it is not advisable, and we do not actually use the term mad in our facilities. And so mental health, we need to understand, is part of health, and there is actually no health without mental health. And so if Moomen gets an accident, or if I get an accident and for example, I get a fractured knee, you're not going to address me as the fractured person, or the fractured Moomen, or the fractured Azu. That is not the name you are going to give to me. And so we do not want people to be associated with their illness. Because if you have malaria, malaria would go away. If you have mental illness, the mental illness would go away. And so mad is a derogatory word. And so we would like to address them as clients or patients, because they come into the hospital. And so we see them as clients. Because
how about me? I do not belong to your sector. I'm a lay person, but I also know people who have mental disorders. I can't call them patients. How should I call them?
So he's mentally ill. So somebody who is physically ill is physically ill. So you don't tag them, you don't label them, because it is just temporary, and the illness would go away. And once the illness go away, how are you going to call the person? Are you still going to say the mad person? No. Because if you have malaria, the malaria goes away. And so if you have depression, the depression goes away. And so you don't label them and tag them. It is that labeling and tagging that makes it difficult to overcome the stigma associated with mental illness.
Doc, before I bring in Mr. Yaro, you were talking about the stigma as well before I brought in the issue, the specific issue of certain words used in specific reference to persons with mental health disorders and so on. So what are some of these issues concerning stigma?
Yeah, so the issues concerning stigma, like you raised already, people do not want to associate themselves with anybody who has a mental illness, because they have that feeling that if I associate myself with somebody who has a mental illness, or I marry into a family that has a mental illness, my children are likely to have mental illness as well, which is not true, because the probability is low as compared to other conditions like sickle cell disease, like asthma, and all of that. So it is actually very low. And so the stigma is a big thing that we have been fighting. And for some people, even walking and coming into the hospital alone, I work at Accra Psychiatry Hospital in the center of town. People have difficulty coming into the facility with their relatives, not to talk of they themselves coming to the hospital for care. And a few times, anytime I have the opportunity, I encourage my friends to come visit me. Yeah. And when they come and visit me and see how the place is, they are always shocked and surprised. Right. They do not believe that you can come into the psychiatric hospital and the OPD, you have so many people who are sitting down there, and you see them and like, so are all these people mentally ill? Because you don't know. When you see people outside, you do not know the mental illness they have. And so it is not advisable for you to tag them as mad, because the illness is temporary and then the illness would go away. And so at Accra Psychiatry, some of the things that we do to try and then reduce this stigma is what we have. We have the comprehensive home care services that was instituted by our medical director. And what we do is that we have a team of doctors and nurses and then social workers who visit people at their homes. So if, for instance, Moomen wants to access our services, but Moomen, for the sake of the stigma and because of who he is, does not want to be associated, you call us at the hospital and then we come to you. So we bring mental services to your doorstep and to your homes.
Right. I'll bring Mr. Yaro into the picture now, but just on the light note, talking about illnesses and stigma attached to illnesses. I was watching a movie. Yeah. A man was diagnosed of having foot rot. Yeah. And the doctor tells him it's foot rot. Then he tells the doctor, and a prescription is made for him to go to the pharmacy. Yeah. Then he turns around and tells the doctor, a person of my status, can't you change my foot rot to gout? Because gout,
the name sounds sweeter and nice.
It's nicer and it's associated with wealth. Yeah, foot rot is, that's the way people think.
I do.
Let me bring you into the picture now. So you are the convener, Alliance for Mental Health Development. If stigma does not go away, even if we had enough funding, enough infrastructure, the medications are available at the hospitals for people like Dr. and Co. to use and administer, we will still have a huge problem on our hands. What are your views when it comes to stigma? Have we done well so far?
No, we haven't done well, and you are right. If stigma were there and you have funding, you have medicines, and it's not possible. It's because of stigma to a large extent that you are not getting the funding and the medicines. Yeah. So it's not possible to have the medicines, funding, human resources, and still experience stigma. Where you have these, you will realize that stigma has gone down a lot. So there is an inverse relationship, if I can say so, that if you are able to get funding for mental health, get human resources, get infrastructure, stigma would equally reduce. So the more you have resources, the lesser stigma is, because stigma gives way to understanding and commitment to deploy resources, both financial, material, and human resources, to improve mental health care.
You see, we're talking about stigma. When you consider our local communities, our traditions, and Dr. did refer to that when somebody fractures the leg through an accident, you not say the fractured man, but I wanted to pause him there, because in a typical traditional environments, people are called, and excuse my language, but I am, this is what happens in the communities. The cripple's son, the blind man's daughter, the madman's sister. These are words that are used at the community level, and these words have been normalized. Until there is a certain change at that stage, this issue of stigma, no matter how much you have talked about investment in infrastructure, human resources, and so on, I don't think it will change.
Yes, unfortunately, yes. My little sociology and anthropology tells me these have come from years of socialization, and we will need to take several years of another kind of socialization from birth through to adulthood to change the idea of labeling. Stigma is simply a scar, as we know. So if you identify somebody with the scar and you put that scar on the person wherever he or she goes, and you associate it with movement, with his behavior, with when he laughs or does not laugh, with when he is looking quiet and calm, and when he's excited, then of course we have some way to go to address that from the point of view of where do we start to let an infant coming up know that this illness is in a way that it is so bad that pray never to get it, and if you get it, you are seen as so different from any other human being. Unlike if you suffer bouts of malaria, which will recur. I just recovered from malaria treatment, but when I was having the malaria, nobody
told you the malaria man.
The malaria man. So it should be. And when I was having malaria, they said, oh, you have fever, and then they may have to put you in hot steam and the rest. But nobody ever labeled me for having malaria. But I was made to understand that if someone has a mental illness, then you must be careful with that person. He can either harm you or you can harm him, and that he is so or she is so because of X, Y, Z, among which include he's a bad person, he's doing hard substances, and that is what has landed him. He's a sinful person, and he's paying for his sins. So that has been imprinted in many, many, many individuals, and that's what I'm saying. We probably have to go back to how we have been socialized for a long time to deal with it. And I think our generation and those of doctors, and you of course, probably the children we are now bringing up, we would disabuse their minds from how we view people living with mental health conditions, and how we refer or address their
Daryl, when I return to you, I'd like you to tell us, and I know that pre-2012, when the mental health law was passed, you were one of the advocates for that law to be passed. You have to tell us what your projections were and what you had hoped for when you campaigned for the law to be passed 5 years on or more. Sorry, it's been more. It's 8 years.
8 years.
Yes.
9 years.
9 years. I'm in the 9th year. How far have we traveled along that journey, if we have begun at all? But Doc, so what is mental illness? Is it only when the person goes out on the streets naked, hasn't taken the bath for several months, leaves the hair bushy, then we can say that person has a mental disorder and therefore needs attention? Or we have various stages? If we do, take us through the journey.
Yeah, thank you very much. So when you talk about mental illness, it simply means a state of being unwell in terms of your mind. That is what it means. And it is very important that we understand the mind and the brain. So the brain, as you see it, is a physical structure.
Right.
The physical structure of the brain performs a particular function. And these functions of the brain, the performances of it is what the mind does. So the mind is intangible. You can't touch it, but for the brain, you can touch it. So if someone has malaria, you know that there is a particular parasite in this particular individual. And so you can touch it, you can find it, and then cure it. But unlike mental illnesses, you can't touch it. And so mental illnesses would be akin to the software component of the computer, the functioning of the computer that makes the computer unable to function. And so you need to do certain things in order to allow it to function. And so when it comes to the various categories of mental disorders, they are so numerous and vast that we cannot even finish listing them. So we have a group of them we call the anxiety disorders.
Right.
And for the anxiety disorders, they vary a lot. So you can have generalized anxiety, you can have specific phobia. And so with specific phobia, these are people who generally fear particular things. And so when it comes to they see a snake, they react unusually to seeing the snake. When it comes to, say, flight, they react unusually to the flight, height, water, and then all of that. And so we also have another group we call the depressive disorders. And the depressive disorders we know, very, very common. Everybody knows these things. Then we have the psychotic disorders. So the psychotic disorders are those that include the family of schizophrenia, schizoaffective disorders, acute psychosis, and then and the rest. And when you spoke about the people you see on the street who are, with bushy hair and all of that, that is just like maybe about 10 to 20% of mental illnesses. And you cannot say that somebody who has bushy hair, just by seeing the person bushy hair, naked, has this particular mental illness. No. Until I take a history from this particular individual, until I talk to significant others of the individual, until I do what we call a mental state examination on this individual. Even me, the doctor, cannot say that just by seeing this particular person, you have this particular condition. And the medications vary depending on the condition. Then we also have the epileptic disorders. Epilepsy is categorized under mental health illnesses, and we see these cases at our facilities and at our hospitals. And with epilepsy comes the pediatric mental health illnesses. So people with autism, people with cerebral palsy, people with ADHD. You have a child at home who is very inattentive, cannot sit still, is very hyperactive, and all of that. The place to come is a psychiatric hospital. And we have the specialist who will treat you. Then you will go to conduct disorders. Then you have other personality disorders. And with the conduct disorders, we see akwalabani and all of those things. All these things are mental health illnesses that we treat. Personality disorders, you have paranoid personality disorders, schizoid personality disorder, various forms of personality disorders. Then you come to old age psychiatry. And when you come to old age psychiatry, you have broadly the dementias. So your old father at home has a memory problem. Your old father at home all of a sudden is behaving like a child. Your old father all of a sudden cannot walk to the bathroom. All these things are psychiatric conditions that we see at our mental health facilities.
Look, wow. With this,
and I am not even done. You see, I'm not even done. There are so many.
So everybody, because as you were talking,
yes,
you hit a chord that I so much relate to, and I'm asking myself, am I fine? Am I okay? And I'm sure that, I mean, given the fact that you have mentioned so many, and yet so many others
have not been mentioned.
We're not well.
Exactly, and that is why the research shows that 1 in every 5 Ghanaians have a mental illness. And so if you count us in this room,
it could be more.
And it could even be more, because a lot of the mental illnesses go undiagnosed. Someone can have depression, and the depression can go undiagnosed. And the fact that somebody has depression does not necessarily mean that the person needs medications for the treatment to go. Even sometimes, what you offer your partner who is going through a depressive phase and who is going through sadness and all of those things is a form of treatment.
I get it. We'll come back to you, Doc, for the medical issues. Wow. I need advice. Just by the way. So
but anyway, I have a question to ask Moomen. Moomen said I hit a chord. You haven't told me the chord I hit.
Well, not on live TV.
Not on live TV.
No, but you talked about depression. You talked about anxiety. I mean, I have assignments that I need to finish up by a certain deadline, and I go to bed, and I can't sleep. The body is weak, the mind is tired. I can't go to bed because I'm thinking of not missing the deadline the next morning. And when I manage to sleep, I wake up around 3 a.m. And the first thing that comes to my mind is the work. And so when you hit on anxiety, I'm like, well, I'm caught in there.
Yeah. And even this, we also have another category of mental illnesses, the sleep disorders. You know, people who are able to, when you talk about the sleep disorders, they are unable to fall asleep early.
Doc,
they are unable to stay.
Let me come to Mr. Yaro before Doc. Mr. Yaro, so you were campaigning for the mental health law to be passed. It has been passed. And so what?
Well, and so what? And so we now need to get the law to work. It's one thing having it in place, and it's another ensuring that it works. So the stage we are in now is to let the law work. It cannot just be in black and white on a document by itself work. We have to make it to work, and that is why we are still very much particular talking about the need for the mental health law to be implemented as the provisions so provide in the Act. Recently, I mean last year, the legislative instrument was also approved by Parliament, even though a watered down legislation, for the reason that the much needed mental health fund that should have been part of the legislative instrument was taken out to be dealt with on its own. And so the legislative instrument is left with little substance to work. Last year, I mean this year in April, the National Mental Health Policy was launched. That is calling for a direction for Ghana's mental health to a level that would address the mental health and well-being of the general population. What is now required of us all, and thanks to you for all the good work you have done to publicize mental health, is to appeal to the powers that be that it's not enough to have these documents. Yes, we can pride ourselves. We have one of the good mental health legislations. We now have a mental health policy with a strategic plan. But if we leave it in the shelves, as we have done with many acts and policies, they will just gather dust and life will go on as usual, and we would move nowhere with regards to the 21st century mental health care system that Ghana deserves. So we have the law, and so what is making it work, and unfortunately we are yet to see it work some more.
But in terms of, and one of the main focal areas was funding.
Yeah.
Has the money started coming?
The money has come to some extent. To be fair to ourselves as a country, with the Mental Health Act, has come into being the Mental Health Authority, which is an agency of the Ministry of Health with adequate structures to see to the policy direction or implementation, quality assurance, and all that. You see the organization of mental health care services taking place. We have seen minimal release of funds to the psychiatry hospitals and the rest. There is an improvement in numbers of psychiatrists, and luckily Doctor is here in residence. This morning when we had a conversation, I understood there are now almost 53 psychiatrists compared to much less than that in 2012 when the law was passed. We have district level coordinators, regional level coordinators for community mental health. And we have the Ghana Health Service have a desk for a focal person for community mental health. These have all been as a result of the law. Occasionally we get the releases, but it's still the fact that only 1.4%, less than 10% of the health budget goes to mental health. And looking at the number of challenges in the mental health sector in Ghana, to continue to hover around 1.4 and 10% means we're really not doing much. And it's obvious the psychiatric hospital cannot run, and we can't even talk about community mental health care that the law so much provides for. And that comes to the government showing the way. Once we entrust the running of affairs of the country to a group of people, and that has gone along with controlling or directing citizenry as well as resources of the country, it is only fair that government, as a duty bearer, responds to the very challenges of the citizenry. And mental health is one of such challenges. It would be unfair and unfortunate if any government official or any person in authority says that mental health is not a priority. That person is probably living in another world, because it's so obvious, as you could hear Doctor talking, the range of mental health conditions that people are living with. And you said that it virtually touches everybody. Didn't you say so? Yeah. Even though, yes, we know that clinically, those that people can manage, we are talking about when you see that you now need clinical attention for this kind of situation that you find yourself, then it is the case that you should get support. But those who are able to cope because of obvious day-to-day stresses, they may not be too much of the concern of doctor here. So it's there. Enough evidence shows that as a growing population where communicable diseases are giving way to non-communicable diseases with their attendant comorbidities with mental illness, be it diabetes, there are aspects of mental health, be it high blood pressure, there are issues of mental health conditions associated with it. Just imagine you are diagnosed with a terminal condition. Definitely there is going to be some bit of mental instability. So you can't claim that mental health is not important at this time of our development and even our healthcare advancement. And so that is the reason why having good laws, as Ghanaians are known for, we are very intellectually astute people and do good things when it comes to policies, legislations, and the rest. But what we are left with is really making sure that that works. And that's why the Alliance for Mental Health is calling on government to address the issue of the governing board of the Mental Health Authority, to ensure the visiting committees and the mental health tribunals work, and to invest in mental health, because we can't afford to leave mental health the way it is, because one of us somehow would need a mental health care support.
So what I will do now is we're getting a lot of interest from our viewers, so I'll take the questions. I'll reserve mine and take a few of those from them, and just so they know we appreciate them. I'll start from Facebook. Francis Kwame Nyavo-Woyi says, I'm watching you live from Dubai. Francis, thank you very much. Farhan Wa East says, I'm watching you from IUCG campus. MC Brompa says, Mr. Host, can you please take off your nose mask MC Abrompa, I will not. Thank you. For obvious reasons, of course. And then for those reaching out to me, and so Doc, I believe this one, it's your question. He is Ibrahim Yahya from Tamale. Ibrahim says, Moomen, can you please seek this education for me from the doctor on your show tonight? What is the difference between a psychologist and a psychiatrist? Very quickly, Doc. So
yes. So we are both mental health practitioners, whereas the psychologist treats the illness with talk therapy. Talk therapy talks to you and gives you certain exercises to do. The psychiatrist is a medical officer by training, basic training, and then treats you most of the time with medications and other minor operations like electroconvulsive therapy and then EEG and all of that.
All right, and I believe that the next question could be for both of you, really. Is that, Moomen, can you ask your guest what number of mental health facilities we have across the country? How many facilities do we have across the country?
Yeah, so I'll quickly just name them.
Yeah.
So we have 3 main hospitals, psychiatric hospitals. So that is Accra Psychiatric Hospital, Pantine, and then Ankafo. And these hospitals are under the Mental Health Authority, directly under the supervision of the Mental Health Authority. But then again, if you go to any of the teaching hospitals, i.e. Kolebu Teaching Hospital, Cape Coast Teaching Hospital, Tamale Teaching Hospital, and Konfano Teaching Hospital, they have psychiatric wards with psychiatrists there who can attend to you. And then if you go to the district hospitals, at the district level, we have mental health nurses and then clinical psychiatric officers who have been given some level of training to be able to manage certain mental health conditions. And so if they are unable to manage, then they refer to a higher authority. So really, wherever you are in this country, you can get access to psychiatric care. You can get access to mental health care. And even at the CHIPS and at the health centers, we have mental health nurses who are there who can help you.
All right. Ni Ejie Redwan says, very insightful conversation. Kudos to your team. Ni, we are grateful to you. Patrick Ankoma says, good evening to you, Moomen. Great show as usual. Can you find out from your guests if they are aware that even in mental health facilities, there are some health workers who abuse persons who have mental health cases? I would like Mr. Yaro in particular to respond to this, since they are the ones talking about developing the sector. Mr. Yaro, very quickly.
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't work in a mental health facility. I do get the opportunity to visit there. But what I would say is the mental health hospital, the mental hospital is not in heaven. It's on earth here, and it is human beings who work in those facilities, and they are human. There are times there are excesses. What is important is to be sure that it is not intentional, that somebody is abused, and that if abuse is reported, it is fully investigated, and whoever is found culpable is dealt with as professional ethics require and as the legal regime requires. So I would say it's possible that sometimes abuse or excesses do occur, and when they are brought to the attention of the powers that be, they are swiftly dealt with. So for the one asking the question, you would help the person who you have found to have been abused if you report. And we are very happy to be of help to you. And with your assistance, with the evidence that you have, we can follow it up and then see how we seek redress, the needed remedial actions for this person who has been so abused as you have reported.
Doc, you work in the hospitals, so the issue of abuse?
Oh yes, I would say a big yes to that. And just like the way in our general hospitals there is abuse, yes, there is also some form of abuse in, and he has answered it aptly, and I would not want to waste more time on that. But yes, there is some form of abuse going on.
I want to add that for my good friend who asked the question about
that's
abuse.
Patrick from Winneba.
Mr. Patrick, thank you very much. I think one of the things we can help our relatives with mental health conditions is when we get involved in supporting them in the care and treatment that they so require. Most families are always in a hurry to send their relatives to facilities where they can be left there, and as we call it, and so they can live their lives. So if you do this and send your relative to a mental health facility where one psychiatrist is supposed to see over 20 of the inmates or the people who are there, one nurse is responsible for over 15 people. If you are giving 5 children, I don't know if you can manage it, let alone if you are giving 10 adults with health care needs to manage. And that is where sometimes the issues of abuse come. So families need to get interested in the care and support of their relatives with mental health conditions. And there will not be need to admit them in psychiatric facility unless it's acute, needing some short number of days to stay. And we create conducive environments within our home settings that allow the person with a mental health condition to feel like being a member of the family, go to the treatment, and where he needs to go for review, he goes and returns and is part of that. But if we ship them off to psychiatric facilities or some institution, prayer comes, and hope that they will be well catered for when we have no blood relationship. If you are my blood brother or sister, I will be a bit more sensitive to you than if I just see you as somebody brought to me to give attention. And that's one way we can help improve care and support and reduce abuse of people with mental illness. And there's a lot of therapy in rallying family support towards the treatment of somebody than shipping the person to an institution, hoping that a psychiatrist or psychiatric nurse would give them the best of care.
True. All right. Adanui Samuel, good evening. From Wale Wale, great insight there by your guests. I really appreciate them. Thank you very much, Samuel. Matthew Pipio EIB says, good evening, and I'm watching you from Tamale. How can I manage the daily stress of life such that I do not find myself battling with a mental health condition? And then also, this very one from Felix Appiah. Felix says, Moomen, very good evening to you. I am really enjoying this discussion. Kudos to your guest. My question is, can't we rebrand health facilities? For example, if anyone talks about Ankafo, you have said we shouldn't use the word mad, but people easily say that you're mad. Even in our daily conversations, they say you deserve to be in Ankafo, meaning you're a mad person. If we rebrand these hospitals, perhaps that can change the stigmatization we are all talking about. Am I wrong? Okay, he says, is he wrong?
What was his name? You are not wrong. In fact,
is his name.
That is the way to go, and that is why now the Mental Health Authority and Ghana Health Service is trying to integrate the mental health services into the various facilities. And so now, if you go to a lot of the facilities, you will see wellness and recovery center and wellness clinic and all of that. Yes, so the rebranding is being done. So in fact, you are not wrong. That is the way to go. Yeah.
Okay. So how about
and someone asked about how he's
to handle stress.
Oh yes. So I'll be unable to really go through that now and here, and it will also depend on the type of stress that you are going through, and then a certain assessment needs to be done. So I would advise that you visit the nearest hospital, see a psychologist or a psychiatrist, and then they will be able to help you cope with the hustle and bustle of
Great.
of the day.
So I can't, if I focus, I'll not focus on the questions. Yeah, but you want to...
I just wanted to say thank you to Matthew, Matthew Pipio, my colleague. I'm sure I do, and he's a colleague and team member. Yeah. I think he's speaking for many other people who probably have the same challenge, but that the best is to get professional help. We have clinical psychologists, we have psychiatrists, we have occupational therapists. Perhaps they can help. But let's not forget our social circles, our social networks, the friends, the church groupings we belong to. They are source of emotional and peer support, and they do help before things get out of hand.
There was a question that had to do not just with the way patients are sometimes manhandled, but also with the conditions in respect of sanitation and so on at the facilities. It says that needs to be addressed as well, because it's like it's just nothing to write home about.
Oh yeah, so for that is very false, and I would invite Moomen and your team to come to the Accra Psychiatric Hospital. For Accra Psychiatric Hospital was built way in 1902, 1902, and opened and commissioned in 1904. But if you come there right now and see the state in which Accra Psychiatric Hospital is, you will be marveled. Trust me. And you just need to bring your cameras in, come and see the PRO team, and they will allow you. I'm not going to talk much, but then once you bring in your cameras,
and sometimes this is where I have a problem. What if I pick my cameras tomorrow, and I decide to come to you'll not open the doors for me.
No.
You ask me to go through some processes, by which time you would have gone to clean. I want to come and see the place in its original.
So come in there. Come in there as a patient, come to the OPD, whatever, do your investigation.
No, want to come and record,
yeah, that is why. Yes, that is why I'm saying that. So at that particular point in time, you need permission to record, because we are mindful of our clients. We are mindful,
which I also respect.
Which you also respect.
But by the time I come with my cameras, you would have gone to
No.
You would have gone to clean the toilet.
So you do a preliminary investigation. So come in there, walk around. I can take tomorrow. I can take you there.
You see, I work for TV.
Yeah.
And if I come and sit here and say, when I went to Accra Psychiatric Hospital, the toilets were all broken.
Yeah.
They hadn't been flushed in over 3 weeks. Nobody will believe me unless I show them the videos.
Yes.
And then when you see me with my cameras, you ask me to go and write the letter.
And that is why
by which time you would have flushed the toilets.
And that is why I'm telling you that for the sake of our viewers, and I am sure that my medical director who is listening to me would allow your cameras in there tomorrow. And make sure,
I'm going to do this with you. Maybe maybe so some point. Let's get this. We have to go to Accra Psychiatric Hospital within this week to bring the
even tomorrow.
You asked me to bring you a letter.
That is why I'm telling you. That's why I'm telling you that. That is why I'm telling you that even tomorrow.
I just wanted to say that sometimes, and I like the confidence of Doc in saying that please come and see. And I've no doubt that the medical director would give that kind of permission after some protocols. But what I want to say is that it is usually in the interest of such institutions to open up so that that kind of societal sympathy can come. If you want to taper it whitewash, when inside it's really not the case, you are not doing yourself any good.
That's
it's
true.
Best to know what the challenges are, and then if help can come, it can come. It's unfortunate previous call it exposés probably might have made the leadership of such facilities a bit jittery. But I think that the media can be of help if you open up. And the issue of rebranding, I totally agree. Since childhood, I want to say he has gone to asylum.
Yes.
You know what that means. So another thing for us now should be for widows who are advocating for construction of psychiatric hospitals. Shouldn't we do everything?
Yeah.
And rather ask for integrated facilities, you may call them wellness centers, rather than get another tag. Ankafu equals to madness, asylum equals to madness, now pantang equals to madness. We should not go that way as usual.
Felix, thanks for answering that question. It's a very important question.
Yeah, it's a very important question, and I just want to give a follow-up. You realize that when you spoke about the abuse that was going on in some of the facilities, I did not defend it because I work in there and it's a human institution. So he said it aptly. But with the state of the facilities, I am so confident, and that is why I'm throwing that challenge to you, that even tomorrow you have Moomen Tonight. Tomorrow you can show pictures from tomorrow.
Maybe
yes.
Champon and the rest of the health desk will take this up, and we will certainly make it full up. Let's wrap up now. So there was a law in 2012, just early this year. Then you launch another policy, a national policy on mental health. I don't get it. We already have a law which is not really working the way we expect it to work, and then on top of that you launch another policy. What was that for?
It is for a reason. Policy and legislation gives you direction as to where you want, including strategy, gives you the direction you want to go. It's the intentions you have for mental health, what you are envisioning mental health of the country to be like. The law gives the framework within the confines of which to act, which Parliament so enacts or passes. Legislative instruments gives the nitty-gritties of how to operationalize the law, and the policy gives the overall direction of what every sector of the system, call it, should function to work. So within the policy, you see them expand more around what can happen in the education sector, what can happen in industry, the labor front, what can happen in the women and children department, what can happen with district assemblies, how we should see training of healthcare workers go, and the numbers we want to see churn out every year, more or less. So that is what now gives the blueprint for a healthcare worker, for a social worker, for a community development worker, for a gender activist, for whoever, for the mental health authority to say this is how we want to go. And the law will now have the call them the areas of infractions and what can happen to you if you fail to do certain things. The governing approach to aid the board, the authority, and its linkages with the other agencies of the Ministry of Health and other sectors. So they are in consonance with how policy and legislation should be, and that would define that you actually have a clear pathway to the development of mental health of the country. If not, if you don't know, as sometimes we say, you must know where you want to go, and then you start to work.
Thank you so much. I've been signaled that we have run out of time, but just before we go, so we're talking about the patients, but you are also equally important.
Yeah.
What do you need? Make you happy so you can take care of all of us. Yeah, I could come to you tomorrow. The next person could do it. We need you, but you also need us. What is it we are supposed to do for you?
Yeah, so for me as a psychiatrist and a mental health practitioner, what I would say is that we have limited number of staff, and we have limited number of resources for which we can work with. And what we need right now is the resources to be provided to us, and for the funding more importantly, to be given to the facilities so that the facilities can run. Right now, most of the time, it is institutions like Basic Needs and other benevolent organizations that come to our aid to help renovate our facilities and then to help give treatment to some people. And so basically, if resources are given to us, then we'll be able to function at our best. And I also want to use this platform to encourage our young medical officers who have just come out to see psychiatry as an option. See psychiatry as an option, and once you come into psychiatry, you will love the job and you will get a job satisfaction.
The young people love money.
Yes, yeah, the young people love money, and there is no difference between our salaries as a psychiatrist and as a salary of a medical specialist, salary of a cardiologist. It's the same, right. But it is just the other side hustles that you do that would determine how much you earn at the end of the day. So the salary is the same
all right,
across board. But for doctors, no, we are not well paid. I can say that.
Thank you very much. That's not a conversation we can have on this table at this point in time, because we need 2 hours to discuss that issue. Thank you so much. We've been talking about the mental health system in Ghana. Here at GBC, we asked a very simple question: what's wrong with the mental health system? And Mr. Peter Bedimak-Yaro, convener, Alliance for Mental Health Development, and Dr. Atwesinya Azusung, psychiatry residents, Accra Psychiatric Hospital, have been answering the questions on your behalf. Thank you so much. We are happy and we've been educated. Tomorrow, God willing, we'll be back here with another edition of Moomen Tonight. Until then, you have a very good night. News comes up at 10. Please make a date. Good night.
When the voices that matter speak, they speak to GBC. They speak on Moomen Tonight.
By some of your appointments, you appear to be creating a parallel civil service. 2020 is not too far away from today.